All right.
Hi.
So thank you. We're coming back to our last presentation of the morning by Lindsey. Funair?
Funair, yeah.
Oof.
Just like it's written.
Okay. Lindsey is the global business architect at Orbia Connectivity Solutions, parentheses, Dura-Line. I know you will explain that to us. Her talk is on organizational change management using business architecture. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the Guild for putting this on. It's been an amazing time these last couple of days. I like to tell people it's like my first time going to a dog park. It's like, oh, other dogs. So if you've never done this before, you're probably just like me, where you're like, wow, I'm not the only person who's like this. Extroverted, analytical, super collaborative. Kind of weird to be talking to a bunch of people who aren't necessarily talking back. That's not really our comfort zone, right? So a little bit about Orbia Connectivity Solutions. So that is otherwise known as the Dura-Line brand. So if you ever see these big reels of orange conduit with cable going down the road so that you have better internet so that you can work remote from home, that's us. Thank you. So we are truly global. And by that, we are North America, we are Canada, we are India, we are Oman, we are Czechia, and we are Poland. We have 19 production plants right now for Dura-Line and expanding. What does it mean to be Orbia? So Orbia is not just a parent company. It is a purpose. It drives us. We are driving better life for the world, for people. So people, planet, profit, all three totally equal. It's literally our brand. So if you see the little spiral at the bottom, Orbia, that is a 3-year tracker, gets updated every year, of some major KPIs. So we have 2 that are planet oriented. So we do both our emissions and our landfill impact. We have 2 that are people oriented. So we do % of women in leadership, as well as the amount of money that we put into upskilling our employees. And then we have 2 that are profit. So we do both ROI and our R&D. Tells you a little bit more about Dura-Line if you wanted to get into the nitty-gritty about what the product is. So what we're talking about here today is not just business architecture and not just change management, but how they come together. And it's really an interesting story. So my background is mostly consulting. Started out in market research, then did a little sales and marketing analytics, a little business analytics, then got really into organizational structure changes, post M&A transitions, transformations. So working with IT, working with transformations, working with the change management groups that were helping people to assimilate and deal with the stress of change, because even good change is stressful, right? And working with different organizations that made that all happen. And if you're familiar with the consulting practices, there's a lot of PMO influence. So what's really, really cool about this job and what piqued my interest and made me apply for it, and I've only been here 5 months, so was that we're actually structured almost uniquely. We are, as a business architecture practice, which is so far just me, but under PMO, which is under operations. So it's right at the heart of internal strategic alignment, with project management as a tool, and now with business architecture as a tool. So we're really good at getting in there and very agnostically helping people deal with their pain points and helping people communicate and collaborate with each other. So it's a very interesting centralized seat of the house to be able to just help people, because that's what we do as business architects, right? We help people. So change management has some really interesting steps. And it doesn't matter what kind of change you're going through. You could be doing a total org restructure. You could be just looking at a process, right? And what you have to do is first talk with people. And then talk with people some more, and then talk with people some more. But the reason that you do that is to find out where they are in their change journey, because they can only handle so much at once. If you ask them to do too much, even if they think they can do it, even if they want to do it, even if they're desperate to please you, it's not going to work out right if it's too much for them. So you have to be the adult in the room and say, thank you for wanting to help me. Let's break it down. We'll do a journey together, one step at a time, left, right, inhale, exhale, and we'll get there. And so you help them on that journey and you talk them through it. So the balance between aggressive and relevant goals is really interesting. So this came from a change that we did in the way that we looked at our SMART goals. And so we were looking at action and we're looking at value. And those are very, very important to us, right? So that's what we're trying to do through BA is increase action and value across the organization. So by doing that, we look at, okay, here's your target. It's achievable under SMART goals, right? And that's still your target. Your target is still achievable. But what would your aggressive target be? And it doesn't have to be your first step. Going back to our first bullet, right? We're doing small steps. But if you achieved your target and there was still something left on the table, what would that be? So that together we can make sure we're leaving less on the table at every cycle. So that's why we go with aggressive. The reason we do relevant goals in our change management, right, is because we want to drive value in everything we do. And that might mean cutting back on something. So one of the things that we're cutting back on is the amount of time that we spend in meetings. We're not having 3-hour meetings with the entire salaried payroll sitting around a table talking about how great everything is anymore. We're just not doing that. That's a culture shift that we're undertaking as BA. The inhale and the exhale, right? So this is really important. And I think a lot of people skip this step. It's important to come to the table. It's important to communicate and to collaborate, especially when you're getting together cross-functional groups out of all the different silos, right? But then the part that I think a lot of people discount, at least, in our field, is going back to the silo, going back to the well, really exploring the depth of what that team has to offer before you come back to the table and collaborate again. And then, of course, change is inherently stressful. If you've ever taken one of those 2-page stress tests where it just says what's happened to you in the last year, and you tick off all the boxes and you realize some of them are good. So why is this counting against me for my stress? And then it dawns on you, stress comes from change. If there's change, there's going to be stress. And it could be a good thing. It could be something you love doing. It could be playing with your kids. But if you're playing with your kids in a way that your body's not used to, it's going to stress your body out. Okay, so this is really, really detailed, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide, but it's there for you as a reference if you want to go through it on your own time. The concept here comes from one of my favorite variations of this idea of cyclical growth in business, right? So you have all these, different factors. You have your control systems, your rewards, you have your organizational structures, your management focus, and your management style. And those are all important in understanding where you are now. They don't always necessarily change at the same time. And when there's a misalignment, that can also cause stress. Because if you have somebody who's politically inclined to changing one of these things faster than the others, there's going to be some pull, there's going to be some tension. And so it's important to look at how you grow organizationally as a whole so that you're not imbalancing your growth, so that your growth becomes more sustainable. And that's the whole point of this slide. This one's really cool. So this is, and I come from manufacturing, of course. So, anything to do with continuous improvement is like, yeah. So that's what you have in the define, the measure, the analyze, the improve, and the control for those of you who aren't familiar. That's continuous improvement. That's the heartbeat of it. It's a philosophy. It's not necessarily something that you're going to go through step by step, although a lot of that is there. But first and foremost, a lot of people leave out is it is a philosophy. So this is something that needs to be in your meetings. This is something that needs to be in the way that you talk if you want to see real continuous improvement. On the other side, we have the change management methodology. So here's your ADKAR, right? Your awareness, your desire, your knowledge, your ability, your reinforcement. That's how change happens. But there's a relationship between the two. So you really have to have that continuous improvement spirit built into your culture, built into your habits for the ADKAR to work. And so when you have them come together, that's the magic, right? And so just run through the bullets real quick, and you'll see how this comes together as complete sentences, right? From these different ideas. So understanding requires defining the problem, which leads to awareness. Goals must be measured and measurable to create desire. Determining the best solution is an agile response to continual analysis that builds knowledge. Implementation is twofold. You improve things for the short run and people for the long run. Ability happens when they come together. Sustainable solutions are controlled through predictable reinforcement, and you don't have any of this without trust. So create that safe space with your people so that they have an opportunity to vent to you, because if they don't, it's going to erupt. That's just the nature of stress, and that comes from change. And so recognizing that and creating healthy outlets is how we move from one stage to the next, and we're able to get there together. So this might be a little unique to my situation at Dura-Line with the PMO, but you'll see how BA with change management really makes sense in this context, right? So the PMO, our role in the company is reducing uncertainty. And so that comes from a few different things. Strategy execution, which internally we call strategy deployment. Project management, which also includes program management for us. And then business process. And business process for us also includes workflow. And so when you have that context, it becomes more apparent how BA got brought in as part of the PMO. And so we're using the business architecture tools in order to reinforce and, more importantly, communicate with our stakeholders all of the work that needs to happen in the PMO, why it's relevant to them. So that way we don't just become a blueprint of the organization, we become a roadmap of where you are and where you're going. We also, to use another analogy, it's like you're charting through the water, right? If anybody's ever gone fishing, you need to know where all the shoals are. If you get a big wave and it pushes you somewhere outside of where you thought you were going to be, your first instinct should not be to get back to where you were. It should be to get to your destination, the best route of where you find yourself now. And it's through business architecture that you're able to be agile through that change, even when it's something that's unexpected. So I'll apologize for all the spinning, but it does actually make sense. All right. So on the one side, you have the business architecture team. This comes from BizBach. It should be familiar to everybody in this audience. You have all the different groups that are truly reliant on business architecture. Not all of our stakeholders, but all the groups that are reliant. And then the common tools that we use in order to support those internal stakeholders, right? On the other side, you have the way that we're structuring our change management, which is through the STAR model. If you have some time, research it. It's fantastic. It's the basis of my master's in management from Penn State for strategic management and executive leadership, which they have a fantastic business architecture program. So you can get certified, you can take an individual class. It's really amazing if you'd like some additional higher education on the subject that we're here for today. But the STAR model is the basis of that entire strategic management and executive leadership program. What it is it's taking your process and your information, it's taking your technology, it's taking your measurement rewards, your organizational structure, your people, right? Looking at that through a capability lens, tying it all together so that they supports each other. And then remembering at the heart of it all is your culture. And not just stopping at culture and saying, oh, we got a great culture. It's fun. You know, we wear jeans on Friday. Okay, that's a symbol of culture. It's not necessarily everything that your culture is. Can you cry together? Can you laugh together? Do you celebrate for each other? If somebody has a sick family member and they're like, you know what, I'm not going to meet my deadline because I have to go to another state and be at the hospital and work from the hotel, and I'm sorry, and you can tell each other, thank you for making priorities correctly. Thank you for giving me that support. If it ever happens to me, that's when you know you have a truly amazing culture. That's what we have at Dura-Line, and that's what we're hoping to build on. So how does business architecture come into this? We've foreshadowed a little bit on it, right? And bear with me because it gets dry. So, Cotter. Cotter's fun guy, right? Okay, so change management has all of these different steps, has principles that back it up. You can get really into the papers on this one, but what does it mean for business architecture? Stakeholder mapping and analysis, communication and engagement plans, training and development programs, the change governance structure. This is how it happens. So it's all theory until you put pen to paper. You do the steps for the business architecture and you make people see the vision. Because you can talk about what we'd like to do all day long until they can see how they're going to get there. And that's the role of business architecture. It's just a plan. You can say there's a mountain over there, we're going to move it. I've got a plan to do it, but somebody's got to show up with the bulldozers. And that guy with the bulldozers, he needs to know where that dirt's going to go before he's going to move anything. And that's what business architecture does. It lets everybody know what their role is, where the gaps and overlaps are, so that we can address that ahead of time, so that we're not having people in bulldozers yelling at people in caution hats, right? Let's handle it ahead of time in the room among friends, and then let's get the work done. Your business architecture knowledge base. So I've been in this role for 5 months at this company. Mine is not what I'd like it to be. So the theme of the year is iterative, right? Iterative, iterative, iterative. If we just start at our level 1 on our capabilities, right? That's enough for now to have the conversations that we need to get moving on the other tools, right? And stepping back even further from that, I know this is like taboo, right? But business process is the gatekeeper to building trust. People understand process. They understand that they need help with their process. KPIs are another gateway to building trust. If you can help people with the things that are so cross-functional in nature that they cannot do it alone in their silo, that's where you prove value for business architecture. And so what we're doing is we're taking an iterative approach. We're helping people where they need help. We're encouraging them to come on this journey with us. We're building support for all the foundational business architecture knowledge-based tools that we know we're going to need in the future, that maybe not every executive knows is worth putting time and effort into now, but by helping them with their pain, they want to help us be successful, right? And so that's how we do it, is we step outside of our comfort zone by helping them with the things that are outside of their comfort zone. And we become a team. We acknowledge shared problems. We prove to each other that we can work on them together. We build rapport. We get a rhythm, one foot in front of the other, and we get used to marching together. That's how people become a team, not silos. Value, value, value. So if we're not driving value, what are we doing? We're wasting resources. What are our resources? Our people, our time, our actual product, right? The patience of our customers. If we're not driving value for our customer, we're just spinning our wheels. So that comes to having a customer mindset, right? Customer has to come first. And so that's where our approach with the holistic strategic alignment, right? Everything has to be oriented to the customer. Serving the customer is our North Star. Also, very important, driving force behind us. So the customers in front of us, driving force behind us is who? Our investors, right? So the financial health of our company. So we keep our customers in front of us, financial health of our company driving us from behind, right? So that's how we find out, for instance, what is a KPI? Controversial in most companies, I know, strangely enough. Not everything that can be measured is a KPI. So one of the approaches that we're taking is, okay, would the customer miss it if it was gone? Yes or no, right? That's one bucket of analysis. Another is revenue and margin. Can we trace back this metric to revenue and margin? Does it impact them? Can we prove that it's driving decisions that will add value in at least one of those areas? If not, probably not a KPI. Metric, sure. There might be people who need to know on a daily basis what that is. Not a KPI. And you can go through this lens with impact analysis, right? Your business case development, get down into the solution design. Once you figure out your philosophy, your tools become the rail to get there, right? So your philosophy is your car, right? And then your customers are what you're aiming for. Your engine's being driven by your finances, right? Stay on the rails, get everybody to the destination, and understand that not everybody needs to know that we're going to Boise, if that's our destination. Picking something that most people don't want to go to Boise, right? So here's the thing. Some people, what they want to know is how fast are we going to get to wherever we're going? Some people want to know, what's the food going to be like on the car? Some people want to know, do I get a window view? Is there going to be a view of anything? Should I be on the right side or the left side? Understand what matters to them, what's their value, and that's how you get them to come along for the ride. So to be transformative, we have some steps to help with that. You clearly define your success metrics, right? You build a transformation roadmap. You build a cross-functional team. You develop a clear communication plan. You identify and manage your risks. Now, this is very important. We had some questions yesterday about that. How does risk fit into business architecture? You can do a risk assessment. That's something that's cross-functional in nature. Most people are not going to be able to do on their own in their own little silo. They're going to be really appreciative if you can help them with that. That's another gate that you have in order to say, you know what, I'm going to show some depth here. I'm going to plant a flag. I'm going to make sure that we get to the top of this thing. And then once we get onto the top of this thing, we can build some more breadth from that. And that's how you go onward and upward. You create your own scaffolding. You create your own stairs by tackling the depth issues and building that trust so that people will be able to see that that platform you're creating to stand on stands on something that's solid. Leverage your technology and your data, right? IT does not necessarily control your technology and your data. On the budget, they might, but you have other stakeholders who have a huge play in that. So you can't just say, oh, I have a technology issue, I'm going to go talk to IT. No, you need to do your RACI. You need to find out who are the people that I'm responsible to make sure I do this right as a business architect. Am I going to mess up somebody's day if I don't account for their stake in this? You need to know that just for your own job, not even for helping other people. So you're continuously monitoring your progress and you're adjusting, right? Iterative, iterative, iterative. That's what we do this year. You know, we might have a better understanding next year, so where it's a little more systematic, a little less iterative, maybe our iterations are further apart. But right now for us at month 5, I'm making monthly iterations. I'm telling people, you know what? I took your feedback. I made changes. We're not going to expect this to be this month, but come the next month, this iteration style will be in there. So you have that accessible to you now, and I'll help you through it. KPI ecosystem is so critical. It needs its own slide. It needs its own slide that has no pictures. So the approach to this, because it is daunting for most people, right, is we're going to do a 5W and an H. And our H is broken out into detail too, right? So our who. This is our customer-centric area. We have some questions on there to help you with that. So take it as a tool, take it home, play with it, make it your own. But your who is answered by customer every time. And I don't mean internal customers. I don't mean your boss is your customer. I mean the guy who, if he doesn't show up, nobody gets paid. Your what? Define your people segments. And this kind of comes back to our capability map too, right? So our silos don't necessarily define our people. We have people, for instance, at Dura-Line, who they all have the same job title. You know, they might work in a different state, but one of them is a great process guy. Another is phenomenal at culture building, right? We get them together, we're unstoppable. For your where, what's the relevant structural groups, right? How do we actually break down what's in place? How do we define that? How do we find out what's not in place? Where we look for those gaps and those overlaps. That's another reoccurring theme, gaps and overlaps, a business architecture viewpoint, right? So once you get it on paper, you're able to see what's missing. You're able to see what's redundant. And redundant doesn't just mean we're paying for it twice. That means that we're doing it in different ways, right? And that has a cyclical way of building on itself. It can become exponentially disruptive to have overlaps. So there's a lot of different reasons to map these things for the purpose of looking at gaps and overlaps. If we had a weekly meeting just on gaps and overlaps, we could pick a different topic every single week of the year, and we would make some real progress in a company, right? So our win, the appropriate time intervals. Look at that in the context of meetings, right? Do we have a meeting that's scheduled to come out before the data is available? Or before we give people a practical amount of time to process that data for the meeting? Are we creating stress unnecessarily? Are we pushing that meeting so far out? Are we doing it quarterly instead of monthly, to where we're asking people to report out on something they don't remember or that they've already solved for? So just ask yourself these questions, right? We get into our hows. Building behavior will tell you how far. Our methods and our methodologies will tell you the core of the how. And for driving results, it has to come back to driving results, right? That tells you how much. Our why is the most important though. Value, value, value. If we measure nothing else in our KPIs, let it be that we measured value. So this is a fun tool that we use for our strategic alignment. It's been talked about in the other days a little bit. I like this graphic that was put out by Nexus, iNexus, which like put a I in front of everything. They make it sound like it's an internet company, but so you start with your what? That's your 3 to 5 year strategic plan. That's company-wide, right? Then you move to your how far. These are our annual objectives, also company-wide. From there, we move to the core how of our annual improvement priorities. Now, this is where we're getting into department-specific goals. From there, we ask ourselves, how much? That gives us our targets to improve. Those can easily be turned into your goals and objectives on an HR level for people's performance reviews, right? It feeds into each other. It doesn't have to be competing time for redundant work, right? So we can take our strategic alignment, we can funnel that into our HR process, and we can make life more meaningful at work for people. From there, we branch off into the who, right? On this team, we have these people. And if it's at a high level, it might be on this team, we have these people who will delegate to others, and that's fine. But those are the people who are, look at your RACI, right? They're either going to be responsible or they're going to be accountable. But put them on there. Are they primary or are they secondary? You have to have somebody be primary, or it shouldn't be on there because it won't happen. But you can also have people who are secondary who need to be maybe informed, maybe consultant, have them be involved in the process, have them know that they will also have a loss against them if this doesn't happen. You can use it politically that way. Now, this part's a little controversial. So some people will take their X matrix and they'll look at their 12 o'clock position and they're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then they'll look at their 3 o'clock position. They're like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. And this stuff in the 3 o'clock, I'm going to give that to somebody else to do, to delegate. That's fine. Now, it's a natural inclination then for that other person on their, what we call level 2 X matrix, right? Coming down from that level, they're getting delegated to be like, okay, well, I'm going to take these TTIs, our 3 o'clock, and I'm just going to make that my 12 o'clock. And I'll give myself new TTIs. You can do that, but you're confusing then your how and your how much, right? And so what that ends up doing is the how much on the level 1 doesn't really get addressed. So there's some challenges with that. I would recommend actually taking the AIPs from the level 1 and transferring those to the relevant level 2 AIPs. And then that way you have your stakeholders from the level 1 working on their own TTIs, whether it's as an accountable or as a responsible, right? And then you have the people on the level 2 looking at it from their wheelhouse, their strengths, and seeing what else they can add to it with their new TTIs. And so you then have synergy across different hierarchical levels. And it just makes it more likely you'll succeed. So a RACI in itself is critical. What we've started doing is what we call a RACI 3 ways. So we're breaking out our process owner from our business owner from our data owner. And the reason for that is, say you bring in a consultant group and they want to know who are the relevant stakeholders, right? Before they start meddling with things. Most times what you'll have is if you ask somebody who's in IT, they will give you a very high level list of these are our stakeholders based on user trends. That doesn't tell the consultant who doesn't understand how your company works, how they need to engage on this project for it to be successful. So what we do instead is our business owner is the why a change happens, right? Our process owner is the how a change happens, and the data owner is the what is changing expert. So we make them our SMEs in our RACI for very specific perspective shifts. And that way we're able to build almost a three-dimensional model of what that change process looks like. So who needs to be involved at every level of making sure that this is successful? Okay, so this is a really fun project that we're doing, where we're just tearing apart our meetings. And it's super exciting. We have a lot of great buy-in so far, where people are telling us, you know, this is awesome. So it's a good rapport building opportunity, because everybody hates meetings. Everybody wants their meeting structure and cadence to change, and nobody has the time or the inclination or the breadth of experience to do it on their own, except the business architects. So this is a way that you can really help people day one before you have a single model built. Is you just go in there and say, okay, what are your goals for this meeting? Let's change everything about your meeting so that we're hitting those goals and we're not doing anything that this meeting is not about. Create the space for spin-offs to handle the things that come up. Make sure you put it on a rail. You need a rail. If you have a meeting, you need a rail. That rail needs to be visible to leadership so that there's some level of accountability that that meeting is actually driving value. You should be able to look at your rail and see, this is the value that's coming from this meeting. And if nothing's going on the rail, then we should probably cancel that meeting. Tools that we can use to help us through this process, to help people understand what's changing and why it's changing and why this is a good thing if it's never occurred to them that they have too many meetings on their calendar. They're rare, but they're out there, I promise you. So discover, define, repeat. This is how we make things not just iterative, but actionable in our iterations. Do a Moscow of your meetings. So we took our monthly plant level MORE meetings, our monthly operational reviews, right? And we did a Moscow to it. And we outlined everything that the meeting should be that came from this awesome whiteboarding session. It was brainstorming of all the leadership of what they wanted this meeting to be. And it was glorious, and it included KPIs and philosophies and ways of working together. And then when we applied a Moscow to that, we found that the meeting only actually must have 3 things. So then we're able to take from our canvas, from our leadership discussion that explains to people what the meeting can be, what we're aiming for together, and it breaks it down into them. They're like, okay, this is an actionable step that you can do day one, small pieces that everybody is capable of. And if you want to do more than that, well, this is what the next step looks like, right? So you go through your must-haves, your should-haves, your could-haves, and also importantly, your won't-haves. For us, a won't-have is we will no longer discuss anything that's green. There's no reason to. You report it, but we're not talking about green. So one of the ways that we're going to do that is we're changing our traffic lights. So instead of just 3 circles, green, yellow, red, we're adding shapes. Now, the reason we started looking at this is because there's a lot of people at our company who are colorblind. So the circle's not working too good. And if you want to do some lookup on this, 1 in 12 people is actually affected by color blindness on some level. And you might be like me, who started out on this journey, be like, oh, they have glasses for that. I remember hearing about it on the news like 7 years ago, right? Okay, so that does like red or green. It does not help you with blue. So maybe they'll find a mineral out there that they can put in the glass someday and people will be able to see blue, and that would be awesome. But right now what we're doing is green is going to be a green circle. And we have a little bit of a joke about that, because what is it that a circle is obvious for? It has no points. So there's no point in talking about it in this meeting. So for yellow, we've made that a triangle, which, you know, kind of looks like yield, caution, along those lines, right? Which is appropriate. But we also want to triangulate on why it was labeled yellow, because if your company is like most companies, half the things that are yellow are really red. So one of the first things we're going to do is ask ourselves, is this yellow or is it red? And if it is red, it is going to be a diamond that has the fourth point. That fourth point is action. So if it's red, it has to have action. Now that could be assigning it to a specific person to say, go tackle this by this specific day and make sure that you report out, right? That goes on your rail. It could be, we're going to have a small breakout session. We're not spending time in this large group. People are going to focus on it on a different schedule. That goes in the rail. Or it could be, we're going to escalate. And you have to make sure that this is built into your culture, that people are not afraid to escalate. Because red means I need help, right? I need to assign it to somebody else. We need to break out and do some collaborative thinking on this. Or I need to go to my boss or my boss's boss or whoever it is who can take this roadblock and just make it into a speed bump.
Hey, Lindsey, we've got about 7 minutes and that's your question window.
Okay.
So till the top of the hour.
All right.
So is there a quick wrap up and then we?
Yeah, we're almost done on this anyway.
Okay.
So that was probably the most important thing, was just doing that shift from traffic lights to colorful shapes really is what is going to drive a lot of the cultural influence that we have. And if we didn't take on this small task of changing the meetings, it never would have occurred to us, right? So before I leave this topic, I want to give you our most important, right? So it's not just the 3 shapes. It's 5 now. So we also have a gray cross out bar, because if it's out of scope, we don't want it to be forgotten about. We want to make sure that if circumstances change, that we can bring that up again and we can reassess whether or not it's worth putting the resources on that maybe it wasn't last year, right? So very important not to lose sight of the things that used to be important that were just ruled out of scope temporarily. The last shape is, and because blue is an issue, we've made it purple, is our star. So we want 5 points because we want that to be the most amount of time that we spend on anything that comes up in this context, right? For status, especially since all those green things that were green for months and months and months, and people poured their heart in, making sure that it was met on schedule and on budget. We want to make sure we celebrate the heck out of them. So we're going to put in the effort. We're going to end every meeting with success stories. And we're going to remind people that we're working together towards a common goal, right? We're achieving our purpose together. And that's why we come together. That's why we make an organization. That's why we build companies. That's why we take time away from our families and go out into the big, scary world and say, you know what? You're somebody I can make something awesome happen with. Let's go do it together. And the rest of the slides, you know, you can look at them on your time. You have any questions?
Yeah. Okay, Ruth, what do we have online?
Sure. How do you handle connection time? We leverage meetings for purposefully relevant work-driven conversations, but also in a highly virtual environment, it can be used for connection.
So one of the things that we do, and I have to give full credit to our VP of operations a lot, awesome guy, truly leads by example in everything that he does. Every meeting, we start out with, how are you doing? Sincerely. So make sure that you find somebody who's willing to talk about, if it's a Monday, what they did on the weekend. If it's a Friday, what plans do they have coming up? You know, what trials do you have going on at home? You know, like for me, I have a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old. That gives me plenty of it to talk about. But really build that human connection. We're all people. And we're not going to get any good work done together if we're trying to pretend we're anything but people. So another way you can do that is what I like to call radical honesty. And that means that we don't just talk the walk and walk the talk. That means we're open about our emotions. If I'm angry, I'm going to acknowledge that I'm angry. I'm going to do it in the most respectful way possible, but I'm not going to try to hide who I am in that moment if I'm coming to you for help with a problem, because all you're going to know is that I'm hiding something from you. You're not going to know what it is, but you're going to know I'm being dishonest. And so by having the courage to be honest about who we are in that moment as a person creates an opportunity for us to get to know each other and to help each other on a deeper level than if I just sent you an email.
What ways were you able to leverage your business architecture to ensure strategic alignment? What steps or processes did you take? Can you give an example from your experience?
That's a big question. The short answer is I'm just figuring that out right now. So I'm coming up on, I'll be month 6 soon. And I'm looking forward to using all the formal tools. I'm looking forward to doing my week-long boot camp. I'm looking forward to going through this rigorous certification process and really taking every little precious drop of value out of all of that. Right now, what we're doing is meeting people where they are, and we're bringing our perspectives and we're bringing our philosophies from business architecture. And we're using that to create a safe space for exploring what we're capable of and where it is we want to go together.
Where are we? One more for a short one.
This is very short. It's very technical. In your slide deck, do you have a slide that presents the symbols and the shades and the colors?
No, but if you send me an email, reach out on LinkedIn, however your preferred communication method, I would be happy to share it with you.
Thanks.
So I'm going to admit that I did arm twist you into doing this.
You did. You're great. You're an awesome salesperson.
And I did not expect